Okay, class, today in macroeconomics we're going to be learning about where money actually comes from and what the bank is actually doing with your money. Where are they putting it?
This is so boring.
What?
I said, this is so boring. I don't care where the money goes.
You know, Mr. Hill, you're right. Why don't we take a field trip as a class?
Alright class, my name's JP Morgan, and now that we're here at the bank, we took our little field trip, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the bank creates money and puts it into the market. So a bank makes money by taking people's money at a loan and giving them a loan, and then charging a higher interest rate than they paid, and that's the way they make money. Yes, Vanessa, what's your question?
So does money just like come out of thin air?
Well, I mean, sort of yes, but there is a little bit of a science behind it. Here, let me explain. So, banks just don't hold on to the money that their customers deposit, right? They take the money and they create even more money with it. The banks can't lend out all of their money, though. They must keep a required reserve rate of, it's actually 10% in the US, on hand at all times. Then they are able to lend out this money, which allows money to go back into the market. So it might be a little bit easier if I just give an example, okay? Say a customer deposits $10 into the bank. Then the bank has to keep 10% of it for the required reserve ratio rate. So then say another customer comes and asks to withdraw $90 from that bank. So then the bank deposits that $100. It still has that deposit of $100 in the bank, but then it can also hand that $90 that customer asked for. And then that customer, that man or woman, can then spend that $90 and it'll end up back into the bank. And it kind of just creates this vicious cycle. Then the bank has that $90 to lend out. The bank has $90. No, it can keep 81 of those dollars because it has to take 10% of it to keep for itself. And then it just creates a vicious cycle, which what this cycle is called the money multiplier. So once the process is completely finished itself out, it'll be a total of $900 created by the money multiplier. Initially, we don't count that $100 at the initial deposit. It would be $1,000, but seen as the money multiplier is 1 over 0.1, which is the actual ratio, which gets you 10, and 10 times 100, which gets you 1,000, but we don't count that initial $100. So what it is, it's $900 created by the money multiplier by the banks.
One.
Yes, Mr. Hill, what is your question?
So what is the role of the Federal Reserve?
Alright, well, the Federal Reserve manipulates the money supply based on the fact that a large percent of the money supply is created from bank deposits. Thus, in order to increase or decrease the money supply, all the Fed has to do is increase or decrease bank deposits. So just remember these 4 simple steps, okay? Number 1, the Federal Open Market Committee first has to approve the purchase of U.S. government bonds on the open market. When the government is short of funds, the Treasury issues bonds and delivers them to independent bond dealers, which then auction them off. Number 2, when the Fed wants to expand the money supply, just like an example, create the money for the New York Federal Market Exchange, the bank buys these government bonds from independent security dealers. Number 3, the Fed pays for its purchases with electronic credits to sellers, banks, which in turn credit the sellers' bank accounts. These credits are literally created out of nothing. Number 4, the bank receiving the credits uses them as reserves and loan out several times the amount of the money held in the reserve due to the magic of fractional reserve banking. If their reserve rate requirement is 10%, then 10 times the money, like I said earlier, the money multiplier, is put into the reserve and can be loaned out. The banks can create new loans because of these increased reserves. As the money is loaned, the money supply in the U.S. increases.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Now I understand where money comes from.